If all of the hostages aren't returned by Saturday at 12 o'clock, all hell is going to break out.
It's called The Consequences of a War, and a war that was started by Hamas on October 7th.
Donald Trump the other day said there's 1.9 million people in Gaza. Okay, that's 400,000 shy of what we started with. What are you guys gonna do? Start bombing the rubble? This is biblical levels of evil.
When Israel does 60 times the terrorism of Hamas, we should call them what they are, a terrorist state, and we should stop funding them. It was always about the theft of Palestinian land.
If Israel wanted to occupy Gaza, it would be
it's
occupying
absurd.
Gaza right
None
now.
of them will.
It clearly don't want to be occupying Gaza.
What is your reaction to Donald Trump and his announcement about talking to Putin?
America's got all the chips here. We can get Vladimir Putin to do much of what we would like him to do. I think you could work out a deal where the U.S. pulls out of NATO.
We did not do anything to prevent this totally preventable war.
This week has been dominated by cries of constitutional crisis in DC as President Trump fights the courts and emboldens Elon Musk. It's worth noting in response that US foreign policy has operated without constitutional sanction for many decades and with far graver consequences. Now President Trump finds himself at the beating heart of a genuine crisis unfolding 5,000 miles away in Gaza. Hamas says Israel has violated the terms of its ceasefire agreement and is suspending the release of hostages. President Trump has given Netanyahu the green light to cancel the deal altogether if hostages are not returned as planned on Saturday.
I'm speaking for myself. Israel can override it. But from myself, Saturday at 12 o'clock, and if they're not here, all hell is going to break out.
Well, Arab states are still reeling from Trump's claim that Palestinians should be resettled in Egypt and Jordan, with the US owning and rebuilding Gaza as a Middle Eastern Riviera. They've all fiercely refused that proposal, just as they've long refused to take in Palestinian refugees. But Jordan's King Abdullah struck a different tone on his visit to the White House this week, pledging to take in 2,000 sick children from Gaza and hailing Trump as a peacemaking visionary.
Mr. President, I truly believe that with all the challenges that we have in the Middle East, that I finally see somebody that can take us across the finish line to bring stability, peace, and prosperity to all of us in the region.
So is Trump successfully bluffing to get deals done and then claim credit for a ceasefire reprieve, or is he running the reckless risk of eventually needing a bite to match his bark? Well, joining me to debate all this is Cenk Uygur, the host and founder of The Young Turks, the commentator and author Batia Ungar Sargon, Dave Smith, host of Part of the Problem, and the actor and commentator Dean Cain. Well, welcome to all of you. Cenk Uygur, I mean, look, Trump's literally ignited a ferocious firestorm of debate with this Gaza Riviera plan. As with so many things that Trump does, the immediate response I would have is, well, what does he really want here? And I suspect what he really wants is for the leaders of Arab countries in the Middle East to step up and come up with a workable plan that actually gets things sorted, because Trump's right. Nothing else has worked.
Yeah, Trump is not right about one thing here. His plan is obviously asinine. We all can acknowledge that. It has no chance of success. It's ridiculous. But more importantly, why is he doing it? Can we be honest here? I know in mainstream media and cable news you can't say this. Can we say this here?
Yeah,
it's obviously because of his donors, right? I mean, Miriam Adelson gave him, that Adelson family over 3 elections gave him $337 million. Haaretz reported that she wanted portions of the West Bank and Gaza Strips annexed. So why is Trump saying we're going to own it? He's trying to trick MAGA into thinking after we let the Israelis slaughter more Palestinians as they try to push 2 million people out of their homes and their homeland, and after we finance that slaughter, which we're definitely going to finance, because Trump, and to be fair to Trump, almost all the Democrats, all of Washington is owned by Israel. Netanyahu dog-walked Trump around the park, made him look like a waiter as he was putting his chair in. So we're going to pay for all that slaughter. And then Trump goes, oh, don't worry, because we're going to own it later. We're not going to own anything. You think Israel's going to give it back to us? No, they're going to steal that land. This was never about self-defense. We were right all along. It was always about the theft of Palestinian land. We told you so.
All right, Batia, your response.
I I think that there's a really important point to be made here, which is that no Palestinians have been allowed to flee this war zone because, of course, Israel was not going to let in civilians from Gaza who may have Hamas members hiding amongst them. But also, Egypt did not allow almost a single Palestinian to exit the Gaza Strip. Trump has been very clear that what he imagines here, rightly or wrongly, is the voluntary resettlement of Palestinians who wish to leave Gaza. Now, I know a lot of Palestinians who would rather live in the rubble than leave their homeland, and I respect that. But 40% of Gazans before this war were either employed by Hamas, by the public sector, or by UNRWA, or by jobs in Israel. None of those streams of revenue are going to exist now. And so the question I think we need to be asking is this: does the international community owe it to the people of Gaza to continue subsidizing their living in Gaza under Hamas rule? Because that is essentially what has been happening until now. Now, of course, I do not support any sort of forceful removal of anybody from their homeland, but I don't think that's what Trump is imagining. It was very clear from the press conference that there's going to be this meeting in Riyadh between the Saudis, between the Jordanians, and between the Egyptians, all of whom have done nothing to help the Palestinians forever. And so I think this question becomes who owes who what, and that's really what Trump is trying to introduce here, is a new path forward.
All right, Dave Smith, you said about the plan, I called it insane, ethnic cleansing, and the worst proposal a president can make. But if what it achieves is it gets everybody in a room actually properly debating a solution to all this, isn't it a means to an end?
Well, I guess you could say that about anything. Like, if he doesn't come through on what he's saying he's going to do, and then something else better comes out of it, perhaps. But it doesn't. The plan itself doesn't make any sense. I don't think Batya is right to say that it was clear that this is going to be voluntary. I mean, at best, that was unclear. The only thing that Trump made crystal clear is that they would not be allowed back in. He said that explicitly in the interview with Brett Baer. And the problem, even, I think, Pierce, with the idea, which a lot of Trump supporters, and I voted for him in this election, but a lot of Trump supporters are saying, oh, this is just a Trump negotiating tactic. The problem with that angle is that it doesn't even make sense as a negotiating tactic. I mean, who are you putting pressure on here? Like, the idea is you would have to, in order to have a negotiating tactic here, you would have to be putting some pressure on Israel. I mean, the idea that we're going to put more pressure on the people of Gaza, I think they've felt quite enough pressure over the last nearly year and a half now, and many decades before that. But this is just so, even just to float this out as a starting point in a negotiation is so outrageous. The idea that Israel breaks it and then we buy it after Israel, as we all know on this panel, has used their significant influence. Like, even if you don't want to go quite as far as Cenk and say that, the politicians in America are owned by Israel, although he's got an argument there, Israel has used their significant influence to push America into the entire terror wars of the last 25 years. Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli war cabinet has still been trying to pressure us to fight a war with Iran, another catastrophic war in the Middle East. This is what these guys want. And now we're responsible for cleaning up their mess. It's an outrage. It is the antithesis of America first and the antithesis of the spirit in which so many people, the reason why so many people supported Donald Trump, a break from the permanent war party.
Before I go to Dean, just one more thing, Dave, on this, which is Trump's position is, look, all right, give me a better option. In other words, if it's not America that rebuilds flattened northern Gaza, which is clearly uninhabitable to families right now. I have one. Right? If it's not America that does that, who does it?
Well, I mean, that's... So, I mean, look, if we want to try something new, what we could try is not giving Israel unconditional support and arming and financing.
No, but that's not my question. My question is who is going to rebuild Gaza?
I can answer it, Piers.
Okay, Cenk.
Well, the responsibility ought to be on Israel.
Yeah.
Okay, Cenk.
Yeah. So as you know, Piers, from day one, what I said was Israel should use special forces. This bombing, indiscriminate bombing of the buildings was outrageous. It was always meant to level it. Hold on. So then what I said after that, Piers, if you remember, is you should do a deal with the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank to give the occupied territories back to the Palestinians where it belongs, and have a two-state solution that we've always fought for. And that way they would have the authority and the credibility to be able to push Hamas out of the Gaza Strip.
Who rebuilds Gaza?
That way Israel
who
doesn't have
pays
to
for
do
it?
it.
Who
The U.S.
rebuilds it?
doesn't have to do it. Yeah, I know, I'm getting to it. And so then, I know Israel would never pay for anything. They'd try to make us pay for it.
Right,
We
so
have to
who
pay
does?
for all their bills. So you can't, so then you go to the Arab countries, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and you say, oh my God, we got a deal. We got a two-state solution. The Palestinians are going to finally have a homeland. Now you guys pay for the rebuilding. I guarantee you that they do that. That is an easy solution. The only thing blocking that solution, and that way America doesn't pay anything. There's no more killing. There's peace. The only ones blocking that are Israel, because they don't want two states. They want to steal Gaza, and now they just said it. They want
well, the other people,
it. They're going to steal it.
But the other people.
So there's no question about it.
Cenk, this all sounds utopian and so easy, except that, of course, you've still got a large Hamas presence, as we see with the release of all these hostages. We believe from American intelligence that for every Hamas terrorist who's been killed, they've already been replaced. The ideology may, if anything, have been fueled, and that ideology is committed to the destruction of all things Israel. So this full utopia picture
Piers,
you're painting, it bears no relation to reality.
It's not utopia. It's super simple. No. First of all, Piers, you leave it to the Palestinians. That's why I'm saying do the deal with the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. You leave it to the Palestinians to drive Hamas out. So that's their internal business. But in order to do that, you have to have a deal for a two-state solution. And you make the Middle Eastern countries, the Arab countries that have always said that they want an independent Palestine, pay for rebuilding Palestine. It makes perfect sense. And if you
it
say,
does,
oh,
right
well,
to the point.
Work,
Okay, look, you had me right to the point. You say the Palestinians.
If you go to it and say that it won't work, you're going to the same talking point about how Palestinians are always going to be terrorists.
I get it.
And that's a ridiculous, racist Israeli propaganda.
No, I don't think that at all. But I think the idea that the Palestinian Authority will simply go bang and Hamas disappear, forget it. Dean Cain, let me bring you in here. You've been waiting.
It's not simple, but yeah, of course that's what you do. And they might be brutal about it, but that's
the Palestinian Authority is run
Palestinian business,
you've got a guy
not American business.
You've got a guy in his 80s running the Palestinian Authority, right? I do not entrust him, frankly, with all due respect, to run Hamas out of town. Anyway, I'm
giving you a perfectly viable solution.
All right, it's
perfectly viable. And you're coming out with excuses because Israel wants Gaza. Be honest.
I'm not coming out with any excuses.
Can you admit that Israel clearly wants to steal Gaza? Wasn't that the whole point of this self-defense?
Let me answer you. I certainly believe there are people in Netanyahu's cabinet, Ben-Gvir, Smodrich and others, who absolutely would like that. That's been my problem with this for a long time. Let me bring Dean Cain, who's been waiting patiently. I mean, Dean, look, a lot of people are outraged, as always, by what Trump has suggested. But is there merit to his apparent madness?
Absolutely, 100%. Look, what we're just failing to talk about here is October 7th. And I'll quote Douglas Murray here. You don't get to start a war and then complain when you lose it. And there are consequences to losing it. And Hamas needs to be absolutely driven out and ended in Gaza. That's unequivocal. Otherwise, they're going to completely keep going with the same circle, teaching people through UNRWA and the schooling there that Israelis are drinking your blood, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They're fomenting this. We're paying for half of this stuff through USAID and the other things that are going on. It's ridiculous. I think Israel has every right to step up. I think President Trump has made it clear that he's going to back them 100%, unlike this last administration. And I think we'll actually see something really happen in this area.
But the problem seems to me is there is no real evidence that Hamas have been defeated. In fact, if anything, these propaganda videos they're showing with the hostages, there seem to be a lot of Hamas and a lot of support for Hamas. For these, certainly in the early ones, and I think that would be very.
I can't believe they don't love Israel.
Well, no, but this has been my problem again.
Israel murdered 62,000 people there.
Yeah, but just go back to
wow, they don't love Israel. That's so shocking.
Well, hang on, I'm going to go back to
yeah. Would you love your oppressors? I wouldn't love my oppressors. I wouldn't love people who murdered my family.
You sound like one of the Israelis.
You're wrong. The Palestinians didn't start this war. Israel started it with the occupation. You don't get to occupy Texas for 57 years, and if Texas fights back, go, oh, look at the terrorists in Texas. They started the war. No, Israel definitively started a war. America first. I'm tired of them. Israel first. Israel first. Give them $300 billion. Pay for their genocides. Get out of there. America first. And let these poor people, Palestinians, go.
So the number one problem
is Israel and their infinite greed for land, and slaughter.
So just to be
and
clear,
everybody knows that.
Just to be clear, Chen, because you're going a bit further than you had before. Just to be clear, you think October the 7th was an inevitable consequence of the way the Palestinian people have been treated?
Guys, I hate October 7th. When Hamas does violence, they do so much damage to the Palestinians and the Muslims. But two things can be true at the same time. You could have something awful, and then you could use your brain to figure out, hey, why did that happen? And does anyone think that any American wouldn't fight back if they were occupied and humiliated and their land stolen and their families bullied and harassed and humiliated for 57 straight years? Of course we would fight back. Of course any set of human beings would fight back. But when Israel oppresses them and uses their might of their giant military to crush them, that's not terrorism. But if Palestinians fight back, terrorists! It's absurd. It's propaganda. It's both terrorism.
Okay.
So yes, the Hamas doing terrorism is despicable. And when Israel does 60 times the terrorism of Hamas, we should call them what they are, a terrorist state, and we should stop funding them. Don't send our taxpayer money to go fund terrorist government of Israel.
All right, Batia, your response.
I just want to talk about this idea of Israel owning the United States government, because it seems to me that people who make that argument want to have it both ways. On the one hand, we give Israel exorbitant amounts of money. And on the other hand, somehow they control us through the money that we give them. And it's never been clear to me, like, what do they use for that control? So people will say AIPAC, but AIPAC spends about $3 million on local races in America, on congressional races. It's not a lot of money.
Number one donor in this campaign cycle.
The Israel lobby
AIPAC is the number one donor. They're literally bribing
among the
them.
American people is the fact that Americans are supportive of Israel. It's like the way that the NRA was popular when it was because Americans like their guns. These lobbyists they're powerful to the extent that they reflect views that the American people already have. And I think that's a really important point to point out here, because you cannot take an unpopular view and just use money in order to push it. And nothing has proven that, like this last election cycle.
That's what the drug companies do.
Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley outspent Donald Trump 2-1. Kamala Harris outspent Donald Trump 2-1. Money in politics has been revealed to be nothing compared to the will of the American people. This is an amazing thing. I mean, as a lefty, I was really against Citizens United. And it turns out, actually, the American electorate has a very clear idea of what it wants. If you look at Donald Trump's cabinet, every single person in that cabinet, which is, by the way, the most diverse ideological cabinet in American history.
No, it's not.
They all have a very similar view of what it means to be America first. There's only one thing that they all share, and they all seem to think that having a pro-Israel point of view is very much inherent in the America First ideology, because Israel is a good ally. Israel brings a lot to the table. We get a lot more bang for our buck. In fact, I think Israel should stop taking aid from the United States, because I think Israel has paid a much higher price for that aid.
I agree.
In terms of its sovereignty. It has been bad for Israel to take all this money, because it means that the Americans can tell them what to do. And they shouldn't accept that. They should be sovereign nations. I'll just make one more quick point. Sovereignty is not something you can give somebody. It's not a gift you can give to another nation. I feel for the Palestinian people, but the idea that somehow Israel, which won its sovereignty through winning wars, owes them something in the form of a sovereign state. This is just ridiculous. Like, this doesn't actually make any sense. Shank, you said who should rebuild Gaza? You said the Arab nations should rebuild Gaza in exchange for the two-state solution. But what Trump is about to do is get a deal in which they rebuild Gaza without actually having to have a two-state solution. So he's actually sort of a little bit ahead of the game in the way that he often turns out to be.
Okay, let me bring in...
Monty, you know how unrealistic that is. You think Saudi Arabia is going to pay for Israel to occupy Gaza? Nobody's going to pay.
No, I don't.
That's the trash right there. It all leaves outside to a dumpster. And right here, it's like trash and everything. It separates it, and then it blows air, like it'll blow it like air thing that reads it. Like a mail or clothes. And it's like separates the white. There's shit like that as well. These like emergencies right here, like little emergency things, shut down, this whole little area. Go crazy. These as well right here. These emergency lights, turn off the lights and shit. If this a power emergency, if anything ever happened, I just hit that button and it'll. And then in the computer, it'll let them know. In the computer, it'll let them know what area was shut down, what's going on. So you see like a maze up in here, right? And this more trash too, where trash goes. Like it separates it. The machine right here reads it. Office right there. I think we're just running cans right now. I mean plastic right now. I think that plastic right now. See all that plastic over there? We're in the plastic right now. This is where our money at. You know, plastic, water bottles and shit. Like water bottles and shit like that. That's where our money at. Coca-Cola, Dr. Pepper, places like that, they invest. You know, and like I say, like you have to separate the white from the clear, because when they break it down and put it through them, when it get cut up into little dust particles, the white can't be in there and mess up the whole thing. So yeah, man, it's like a maze, man. This shit crazy. Every time I look at this shit, good investment though. I'm gonna be honest. It's good.